Welcome to chapter 30 of the book of 1 Samuel. The last chapter, we had the rejection of David helping Achish, the ruler of the city of Gath, when the Philistines were going to attack Saul and Jonathan and Israel. So Achish sends David back to his town, which was Ziklag, and David had been marauding against different places, killing everybody in these towns, and men and women, so nobody could go back and tell Achish that he was actually marauding against his own people. So David ends up going back, and it says, "And it came to pass in the entering of David and his on-thrown men to Ziklag on the third day," so 3 days to get down to it, "that Amalek made an attack upon the south and upon Ziklag. It struck Ziklag and burnt it with fire. And the women and all the ones in it, from small unto great, they did not put to death, man nor woman, but they took them captive and went forth in their way." Odometer is a derivative. All these orange numbers are in our English derivatives book. "And David and his men came unto the city, and behold, it was burnt with fire. And their wives and their sons and their daughters were taken captive. And David and the men lifted their voice and wept until whenever there was not strength in them to weep any longer. And both the wives of David were captured, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, and Abigail, the wife of Nabal the Carmelite." So what David was doing now has come back on him and these men who have been doing this to other people. God told the Jews to go in and take the land and to defeat these nations that were in there. It's different because if God tells you to do something and you do it, then you can't say that this was the wrong thing to do because God had his purpose. But it still has consequences, and David, it says, was afflicted very much, for the people said to stone him, for all the people were in severe pain of soul, each over his sons and over his daughters, and they were probably thinking about what they did to the people and what happens if what we have been doing happens to our people. So I'm sure that they would have thought the worst. "And David was fortified by the Lord his God." So he goes to the Lord, prayer, supplication, and it says, "And David said to Abiathar the priest," so he calls a priest, Abiathar the son of Ahimelech, who was killed by Saul with the other priests. And he says, "Lead forward the ephod." Now, later it says that David was wearing an ephod, and so were other people. So it's some type of a clerical garment of some sort that goes on the body. And it says, "And Abiathar led forward the ephod to David." Now, somehow these ephods are an object that people could divine with them to the Lord, find out what they should or should not do. "And David asked through the Lord, saying, unless it's just what they're wearing, then they can go through that person. That's a possibility. But David asked through the Lord, saying, shall I pursue after this troop?" And Gadur is a Hebrew word. "Shall I overtake them?" And the Lord said to him, "Pursue, for in overtaking you shall overtake them, and in rescuing you shall rescue." And David went, he and the 600 men with him. And they come unto the rushing stream of Besor, and the extra ones stopped. And about 400 men pursued, and 200 men stood, who stayed on the other side. of the rushing stream of Besor. And they find an Egyptian man in the field, and they take him and bring him to David and give to him bread, and he ate. And they gave water to him to drink. It says out in the desert, probably down, I think, towards the Sinai. And they give to him a piece of dried cluster of figs and 2 grape clusters. And he ate, and his spirit stood up in him, for he had not eaten bread and had not drank water 3 days and 3 nights. And David said to him, "Who are you? From what place are you?" And the Egyptian servant lad said, so apparently a young man, "I am a bondman of a man, an Amalekite, and my master left me, for I was unwell, today being 3 days." So I guess they probably thought he was going to die, and they just left him there, and he was being sick. "And we made an attack upon the south of the Cherethites, and upon the ones of the part of Judea, and to the south of Caleb, and Ziklag we burnt in fire." That was the city they were in. And David said to him, Will you lead me to this troop?" And he says, "If you swear by an oath indeed to me according to God, to not put me to death, and to not deliver me into the hands of my master, then I will lead you to this troop." And he led him. And behold, these were dispersed upon the face of all the land, eating and drinking and celebrating over all the great spoils which they took from out of the land of the Philistines and from out of the land of Judah. That would be the Amalekites. They're all over the place and eating the foods and taking the spoils which they had. And David came upon them and struck them from the morning star, Eosphoros, and until evening, and of the next day. So a long battle. And not a man was preserved from out of them, but only 400 boys who mounted upon camelus, camels, transliteration, and fled. And David removed all which the Amalekites took, and both his wives he rescued, and not one thing perished to them from small unto great, and unto sons and daughters, from the spoils unto all what they took of theirs, all the things David returned. So apparently the wives were not harmed, but yet David was able to conquer these people and take everything, and it turned out good. What God had said came to pass. And David took all the flocks and the herds, must have been a lot, and he led them away before the spoils. And concerning those spoils, it was said, "These are the spoils of David." And David came to the 200 men being left behind of the troop going after David that stayed at the rushing stream of Besor. Now, David and Jonathan will be killed the next day during this battle. So David will now take these all of these goods that they have taken and spread them apart throughout Judea, and he becomes king. But that's the next chapter. And so now the 200 men that stayed behind, it didn't actually go into battle. It says they came forth to meet David, happy because I'm sure many of them had wives and children that were taken, and to meet the people with him. And David came forward unto the people and asked them the greetings for peace, Irene, peace. And every wicked and pestilent man responded of the men warriors going with David and said, "Well, for they did not pursue with us, we shall not give to them from out of the spoils which we rescued, but let each take away his wife and his children, and let them return. And David said, You shall not do this, my brothers, after the delivering up of the enemy by the Lord to us. And he guarded us, and the Lord delivered up the troop coming upon us into our hands. And who will heed these your words? For they are not inferior to us. These people aren't. They're not. Who's going to listen to what you're saying? These people are not lesser than we are. For according to the portion of the ones going down to war, polemics, so shall be the portion of the ones staying by the equipment. According to the same, they shall be portioned. So the spoils are split up evenly between the warriors and the ones that are taking care of the food and the weapons and so forth. Now, it'd be interesting to know if the same thing happens today with in Israel, but I don't know of them taking the spoils, but maybe they did. And it came to pass from that day and forward that it became for an order and for an ordinance in Israel until this day. And David came to Ziklag, and sent to the elders of Judah and to his neighbors of the spoils, saying, Behold, a blessing to you from the spoils of the enemies of the Lord. To the ones in Bethel, this is where they went, the goods, and to the ones in Ramoth of the south, and to the ones in Jattir, and to the ones in Aror, to the ones in Siphmoth, to the ones in Eshtemoa, to the ones in Rachal, to the ones in the cities of Jerahmeelite, and to the ones in the cities of the Kenite, and to the ones in Hormah, and to the ones in Beerashan, to the ones in Atak, and to the ones in Hebron, and to all the places which David went there, he and his men. So he sends all of these things to the people. It must have been after what happens in the next chapter where Saul and Jonathan are killed. And we'll find out about that if you join us in chapter 31. Till then, God bless.